Testing. Okay, just waiting to hear that it worked. Haven't heard anything, though. Everything. Everybody ready? Tell me when you're ready. You ready? You're ready?
So, yeah, I'm gonna get paid in 3 months.
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of this act, they should state so at this time. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please put your microphones on.
Mrs. Werner?
Here.
Mr. Venuto?
Here.
Mr. Lewin? Mrs. Notch?
Here.
Ms. Sheehan?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Zexer? Mr. Yeager?
Here.
Ms. Stevenson?
Here.
Thank you.
We need a motion to approve resolution of 2/27/25 for Steve Cowlick, 1206 Maryland Avenue.
I'll make that.
Okay, so shall we say,
You can say.
okay.
I'll second.
Mr. Lewin motions, Mr. Venuto seconds. Mr. Lewin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
We have
Thank you.
missing people tonight.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the minutes of January 23rd, 2025.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
So Mrs. Notch motions. Was that Mr. Walsh who seconded?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Notch motions, Mr. Walsh seconds. Mr. Lewin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our first application this evening is Catherine and Robert Barbero, 106 Second Avenue, Block 1013.
It started. Good. Thank you.
please. Second half.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. Ron Gelzunas appearing on behalf of Robert Barbaro. The property, of course, is 106 Second Avenue. This property contains a single-family home situated on a pre-existing 50 by 100-foot lot that backs up to the marsh and the wetlands. The proposal is to construct a rooftop deck that will be fully compliant with all of the bulk regulations. Ordinarily, such an expansion of a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot is permitted as long as you're not creating any additional variance situations, and the addition would comply with all of the zoning regulations. Although this deck is that, it is fully compliant. The city does have an ordinance 525-73E, which applies to properties which are non-conforming, which were previously granted variances. So this property was granted variances back in 1988. A copy of that resolution was attached to the application. None of those variances that were granted in 1988 are in play here. In other words, none of them are affected or in any way exacerbated. And we'll go through them. This evening here is Mr. Paul Farnan, our architect from Fulcrum Design Group, and of course, Robert Barbaro to my left. If we could please have them sworn in.
We have also sworn our board engineer. Do each of you swear or affirm to tell the truth, all truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Paul, could you just briefly place your credentials on the record?
Sure. New Jersey State licensed architect. Went to school, New Jersey Institute of Technology, bachelor's of architecture degree, master's in infrastructure planning. Been practicing in the state for the better part of 10 years.
And have you testified before planning and zoning boards?
Yes.
Or have you been accepted as an expert in your field?
Yes, by this board as well.
Why don't you take us through the current conditions on the property and then the proposal?
Sure. So the existing conditions, as already described, a two-story single-family residence. The rear of the property, which is the focus of the work, is a two-story deck. The intent is to construct a roof deck over the roof structure itself, not over the existing deck that's already been built. The house was effectively reconstructed in the 80s from the ground up, if I'm not mistaken. And at the time, as Mr. Gelzunas mentioned, variance relief was required, and that's what brings us back here today. The proposed design would not increase any of the lot coverage, none of the impervious surface. Obviously, the proposal is directly above the roof structure. Also, we're complying with the setbacks. What's required is 5 feet on the side. Right now, the house is about a little more than 4.5 feet from the side setback. So the intent is to hold that edge, that leading edge on the side of the new roof deck, hold it back to comply with the 5-foot setback. So we're not exacerbating that either. One thing I would call to attention is the way the deck is designed. It will be bearing on an existing interior beam that was part of the reconstruction in the 80s. We don't know exactly where that is because it's embedded in the ceiling, a hard ceiling. So there's a little bit of leeway there in terms of where that edge of the deck joist will bear. That may impact the height slightly. However, even if our deck height was coplanar with the ridge of the roof, our proposed 42-inch handrail would still not exceed the 35-foot max. So we're not encroaching on or exceeding the allowable building height either.
So right now, you're showing on the plan, on the elevation, the top of the railing of the deck is 30 feet 4 inches.
Correct.
Could you bring your mic a little closer?
So and it's 35 feet in the zone, correct? So you're
Correct.
well under that.
Correct. Maximum building height is 35 feet.
Now, in terms of, can you see this from the street? This is in the rear of the building,
That's correct.
and the peak of the roof is actually between the deck and the street.
Correct.
So a person standing on the street or a car driving down the street, would you be able to even see the railing from that angle?
Perhaps slightly, but it would not be obtrusive, in my opinion.
And so what you were describing earlier about the location, you might have to move that deck closer to the peak or further away from the peak so that it rests on that structural support.
Correct.
But in no event is it, you think that it's going to be, it won't be higher than the roof peak, the level of the deck.
Correct. The roof, yes, certainly not the level of the deck will not be above the ridge line, we'll call it. But the railing will inevitably to some degree, but even if the roof deck was, as I said, coplanar, the same level of the highest point of the roof, the railing would still fall beneath the maximum permitted building height.
Is there any construction proposed in connection with this that would touch at ground level, that would
No.
in any way affect existing grading or drainage?
No.
And as you, I mean, all the setbacks are met, as you indicated.
Correct.
In fact, they're exceeded in many cases.
Correct.
And then the existing building is not a large building for the lot. In fact, it's, could be said to be a little underdeveloped.
Right,
The size is
right,
huge.
correct. With the entire development of the property is also falling below the maximum permitted lot coverage, which
So-
again, this will not impact at all.
So in 1988, and the reason we're here, variance is granted where it's an undersized lot. The lot frontage is narrow, lot width, of course, the side yard setback,
Correct,
and the front yard setback.
right,
And this additional deck proposing doesn't involve any of those features. We're going to meet the side.
correct. It's the side that's closest, but the proposal is to stay within, and again, we're not necessarily bearing on that side wall either, the closest to that side property line. So we have great latitude in terms of where that side is situated, that edge of the deck, but in no circumstance will it encroach that setback, that side yard setback. It will meet the 5-foot requirement at least.
And you're allowed to have the rooftop deck.
Correct.
So
In fact-
I think if you go around the neighborhood, you might see some other.
Right, right. In the neighborhood, you'll see examples of effectively exactly what we're representing on these drawings.
So in light of that, do you see any substantial detriment to the public good after meeting all of those requirements, or impairment to the zone ordinance or plan?
No, I personally do not see any impact that's detrimental to the neighborhood or any neighboring properties. Again, we're complying with all of the various bulk standards. So, no, I don't see how it would be impactful to the neighborhood.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant or Mr. Farnan?
I do, I have one. Will the investigation of where that structural member onto that beam will be done before the compliance plans were submitted or during construction?
I would say during
During
construction.
construction. So I would just ask the applicant to add notes on the plan referring to that, ensuring that you're not encroaching into the setbacks, and that that structural member is liable to change, so it doesn't create any issue before we issue a certificate of occupancy. So
Understood.
just so that the plans are clear as to, that is a variable that will be dealt with during construction, and that we'll review that before your CO is issued.
Makes sense.
I have a question. This house is located within the historical district. Is there an HPC approval?
We do not have conceptual approval, no. Our intent is hopefully pending the approval from this board, we would submit that with our application to obtain approval from the HBC, final approval. It is not contributing, the house is not contributing, so that's,
I'm sorry, did you say you have conceptual approval?
no, we do not have conceptual approval. The intent is, again, the hope is to leave here with this board's approval and attach that to our application to the HPC for final approval. It is located in the historic district as a non-contributing structure, so we believe it'll be approved there as well.
If there's no other questions,
Yes. Let me just, if I could just write one note real quick. Okay, so I would like to summarize my report, I'm sorry, good evening, everyone. I would like to summarize my report dated November 21st, 2024. This is a project located in the R2 low-medium density residential district. I agree with Mr. Gelzunis's analysis of why they're here. Normally, if you're adding on to a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot, and that addition is totally conforming with regards to bulk and area criteria, they could normally just go pull a permit. Except when it has been heard prior by a planning board or a zoning board, and variances have been granted. So this is what's called our zoning review section, and it gives the board another review of it to ensure that it's complying with any of the conditions that were set forth during the original approval, and to make sure that the criteria that was used to evaluate the variances at that time is not being impacted. So that's why, in my opinion, why it's in there. Okay, so this is a 12 by 16 rooftop deck. You've heard testimony from the applicant's architect as to what that consists of. I'll roll right into my completeness review on page 2. They've asked for waivers from items 19, 26, 27, 28, and 33. Due to the nature and scope of this application, I supported all of those waivers. Item number 18 is just if the board grants approval, there should be an approval signature block added to the plan, so that should be provided as a condition of approval. And if the board finds those waiver requests acceptable, I did recommend deeming this application complete. Once again, I did say that this is an undersized lot on a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot. The lot is non-conforming with regards to size. 7,500 square feet is the minimum that's permitted in the zone, where this lot is existing at 6,500 square feet, and it is sufficiently narrow that it doesn't comply. 60 feet is the requirement, 50 foot is what exists there now. The building itself has a non-conforming front yard setback as measured to 2nd Avenue. 12.83 feet exists, 25 foot is the requirement. That's not being altered. The deck is set back at a minimum of 25 feet, so we're good on that aspect. The side yard setback, there's a 15-foot total in aggregate, so 10 foot on one side, 5 foot on the other. This structure has an existing non-conforming setback of 4.6 feet on one side, and the applicant has indicated that that deck will not encroach into that required 5-foot setback, so I think we're good there. All of the other bulk and area criteria is met. It's not increasing lot coverage. The floor area ratio is existing conforming situation. They have adequate parking based on the number of bedrooms. So this is essentially just a zoning review to ensure that this addition is proper on this lot.
Excuse me, Craig, I think I got a typo in mine.
Okay?
The building height, you're saying proposed 35 foot?
So I believe there was language in their application that indicated that they were going to be 35 foot or less.
Okay.
So I incorporated that to ensure that. But you've heard some clarification that it's probably going to be lower than that, but it can be no more than 35. Okay? And then on my general review comments on pages 4 and 5, these should all be conditions of approval. I already talked about the signature blocks on item number 1. Item number 2 is, this is our standard condition that we apply to every application, is that they have to comply with the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements, both during construction and after construction, so that should be a condition of approval. Item 3 is our standard condition that the certificate of occupancy is tied to an acceptance of those improvements and the inspection of those. Item number 4 is compliance with the requirements of the Shade Tree Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works Department. We received memos from the Fire Department recommending approval dated 1/13/25. Public Works recommended approval dated 1/9/25. Shade Tree Commission recommended approval 1/22/25 and had a email attached to that. And let me make sure, Second Avenue, there were 2 city trees out front that are not being impacted, so they were okay with that, and that's all the reviews I have for that. Okay, item number 5 is compliance with all other state, county, and local approvals. We talked about the historic district. You're required to provide evidence of final HPC approval. Item number 7 is compliance with the applicable affordable housing requirements at the time of approval or issuance of permits. And then finally, should the board grant approval, you're required to revise the plans consistent with the conditions that they set and submit those requisite compliance plans to the board engineer for review and approval. That's a summary of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
And the applicant doesn't take any exception to those requirements.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? At this time, I'd like to open it up to anyone within 200 feet of the property that wishes to speak. Anyone beyond 200 feet that wishes to speak? Closed to the public. Any final remarks? No?
No, I think that's a very straightforward application. As you can see, it doesn't create any variances other than the requirement in the code that the applicant come back because previous variances were granted. It's a very modest addition to the home. It gets them up past the dune, which is healthy, and so healthy it's growing higher and higher and blocking some views. So
All right, the motion I recommend be made unless we're going to phrase it in the positive. Of course, you can always vote negative. If you're going to vote in the negative, please carefully articulate your reasons, because most of what is on the record now are things that are, if you're going to say no, you just make sure you clearly state your reasons. The motion I recommend be made is a motion to grant variances 1 through 5 on page 3 of the engineer's report, with the waivers 19, 26, 27, 28, 33 on page 2, and condition number 18, and numbers 1 through 8 on pages 4 and 5 of the engineer's report. That's the motion I recommend be made, but how you vote is up to you.
I make a motion?
I'll second.
Ms. Sheehan motions, Mr. Venuto seconds. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you, Madam Chair, board members, for your time.
Thank you.
I think that was the quickest one we've approved.
It's actually a book about zoning.
Right.
Good evening, board members. My name's Lindsay Newcomb from the law firm of Monzo Catanese DeLalis, here tonight on behalf of Alan and Sherry Blumenthal, both who are with me. We also have Pam Fine with us tonight. The property address is 109B First Avenue. The property is currently developed with a one-story semi-detached dwelling comprised of 2 units. Unit B, that's the subject of this application, is at the rear of the property. The applicant's here tonight seeking variance approval to construct an 11 by 13.5 screened-in porch and a new paver walkway at the rear of the unit. The screened-in porch is proposed to be located in the exact location of an existing patio. The lot's undersized, and as such, the pre-existing nonconformities as to lot size, lot width, and lot frontage are pre-existing nonconformities. And although no nonconformity is being increased, as in we are not further encroaching into the setback or exacerbating any of those, because the use at the site is a non-conforming use and we are screening in this patio, we're before the board asking for approval. Lot coverage is also a pre-existing nonconformity on the site that this application is actually improving, which you'll hear Pam testify to. If you wouldn't mind swearing in Alan, Sherry, and Pam, please.
Our board engineer remains under oath. Do each of you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So Sherry, we'll start with you. You own Unit B at 109 First Avenue, correct?
Yes.
And can you tell the board a little bit about why you want to add a screened-in porch?
Well, thank you for allowing us to speak. Our reasons for wanting a screened-in porch very much are involved with health and quality of life. Mosquitoes, and we are pretty close to the nature preserve, do present many health hazards, such as West Nile virus, Eastern equine encephalitis, and dengue fever. Repellents are not completely effective. Also, having a roof over the patio area provides better sun protection from skin cancer, which is now a personal issue. Cape May also provides the benefit of clean air, which promotes health. Being outside as much as possible is, of course, advantageous and a pleasure in Cape May. There is no detriment to the plan. Our neighbors are actually looking forward to using it as well. By replacing all of the existing pavers with those that are pervious, we will actually increase or have a net increase in natural drainage on the property. The plan causes no hardship to any neighbors or to the city. It is only visible by walking to the rear of the unit and does not extend even to the existing roof. So it is merely covering a pre-existing patio. We hope that you will consider our application favorably. Thank you.
And Alan, I believe you had a few words for the board about why you'd like this approved as well.
Alan, if you can, thank you.
I think some of this is going to be similar. When we looked to buy a property in Cape May, a long time dream, one of the things we really wanted was a deck or a porch. Many of the units in our small complex had decks, including the unit next door and the one right after that, so we assumed there wouldn't be any issue. Then we found out 2 years earlier the zoning laws had changed. We looked into trying to get a variance to allow us to add a deck. However, we found the cost of applying for the variance and the steps needed to go through was difficult, so we decided not to bother. After all, we had a home. We had a home in Cape May. We live there 5 to 6 months a year. We don't rent. Now we're in a different situation. I'll be 81 years old. I'm sorry. I'll be 81 years old and my wife's 79 when we come back for the summer. We have both had recent health issues. As a result, we'll be spending more time in our backyard that my wife has lovingly made beautiful with the addition of a garden. However, the older we get, the more susceptible, excuse me, the more susceptible we become to the disease caused by mosquitoes. Therefore, the application of a variance is more than an issue of not getting one that we had originally hoped for, but instead it's an issue of health and quality of life. We decided that it was necessary for us to do whatever we needed to do in order for us to get a chance to have an outdoor space that would be safe and comfortable, where we can spend our time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, Pam, why don't you talk a little bit about the plan that you created for the screened-in porch and review it with the board?
Of course. So I'm going to start on the P1 sheet, which is basically the architectural drawings.
Accepted as an expert.
Oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry. I absolutely should have done that.
Well,
Pam-
we'll take it for granted.
Okay, sorry about that. I did take it for granted.
It's good to be back. So I'll start on the P1 sheet. The left side is the existing plans and elevations. Right side are what we are proposing. So left side, I'll run through this really quickly just to outline what is here. You'll see the zoning conformance schedule up in the left-hand upper corner. As mentioned before, we have an existing non-conforming use, which is one of the main reasons why we're here tonight. We have a two-family dwelling where only single-family dwellings are allowed in the zone. So no matter what we do on this property, we would need a variance. In addition to that that existing conformity, we have lot area, lot width, and lot frontage are also existing nonconformities. So it's a small lot, it's a narrow lot. So we're up against some hardships. Front yard setback, we actually comply. We are not proposing anything in the front yard setback. Side yards, we are required to have 5 feet minimum and 15 feet total. We have an existing non-conforming left side side yard, which we are not changing. It's 4 feet where 5 feet is required. Everything that we are proposing is in the back, where 25 feet is required, and we're proposing 28 foot 2. So we are well within the confines of what is allowed to be added along the back. And as mentioned before, we have lot coverage. We are actually currently over in lot coverage by a little over 400 square feet. What we're proposing, excuse me, is to remove existing concrete paver stones and to replace it with pervious pavers. So we are proposing a net reduction in lot coverage. We felt that that was a good trade-off for the addition of the screen porch. And floor area ratio, we are well under what is proposed. What is allowed, I should say, is 2,600. What's proposed is 2,012. We are not changing anything with floor area ratio. Building height, again, we are currently at 15 feet, a little bit over, 15 foot 1 plus or minus. 35 feet's allowed, and we're not changing building height at all. The proposed roof height is actually below the ridge line, and you'll see that in the elevations. And then parking, we have 1 per unit for 2 total. We're not changing anything, and that complies. So the new screen porch, the size of the screen porch is 13 foot 6 by 11 feet. Which is a total of 148 square feet. As you see on the right-hand side, it is located along the back right corner of the property. You cannot see it from the street. We have no rear neighbors. We have no neighbors to the left side. And then to the right side, we just have another duplicate of what exists on this property. So another two-family dwelling. So everything is shielded from the street. What we're proposing in the backyard is within the setback allowances. As you see on the elevations, the ridge line is much lower than the current roof line. So you will literally not see anything from the street. I will answer any questions.
Yeah. So we're asking for a use variance, obviously, because we're a pre-existing non-conforming use that we're going to put a screen porch in. And we are asking for variance relief related to the pre-existing nonconformities, even though we really aren't exacerbating them.
Yes.
So if you can go through the standard and how we meet that for the board?
Sure. I'll touch on the C1 variance criteria. Basically is the narrowness, shallowness, or irregular shape, or exceptional topographic condition, or other unique conditions or physical features affecting the property. As I touched on earlier, we have an undersized lot. It's narrower than what is permitted in the zone, and the area is smaller. We have existing non-conforming lot coverage, which we are proposing to be reduced, but that is another hardship we're forced to work with. And then finally, the existing non-conforming use is an existing duplex, which we cannot change. So we're working with 3 hardships on this property, none of which we can really change. So I do believe that the C1 variance does apply.
And for the C2 variance as well as the use variance, you talk about the purposes of zoning?
Yes. Yes, so I think I have a few that I highlighted that I think apply to this project. The first one is letter A, to encourage and promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. As the Blumenthals mentioned earlier, we have diseases from mosquitoes, sun damage. There are many things that you could see become an issue just having an outdoor open patio. So the addition of a screen porch does help promote the health of my clients and the neighbors who are also invited to use that space. Letter C, to provide adequate light, air, and open space. We're reducing lot coverage, so we are reducing a nonconformity by what we are proposing being added. We're proposing a screen porch. There are no walls. It is open. It's just shielded basically from above with an open, with a roof covering, but open walls. Letter E, to promote the establishment of the appropriate population densities. We're not adding to any floor area ratio. What we're proposing is a screen porch, which does not count in the floor area ratio calculation. And then finally, letter I, which is the desirable visual environment. Obviously, you can see that it enhances the aesthetic along the back area of the unit. So I feel that this design will promote the purposes of zoning.
And when we go to talk about the negative criteria, which again goes to both the use variance and the C2 variance, there's no substantial detriment to the public good here or impairment of the zoning plan. correct?
Not at all. We don't have neighbors. The only neighbor is to the right. What they will be seeing is very, very minimal as far as any changes goes. We don't have neighbors to the back. There are no views that were going to be sacrificed in this application, so we are actually enhancing the backyard space. We're helping with lot coverage, so I don't see any negative criteria with this application.
Jack, but there is a neighbor directly behind this house. And this is visible from Broadway, too. There's a house directly behind this.
I know that there are neighbors. The first thing is that we did submit from the condominium association, it's a 2-unit, we did submit their consent, and I think we have at least one neighbor here who will speak in favor of it, but I don't, honestly, I don't personally know this neighbor, but I fully believe that there is, and I think what you're hearing Pam say is that there's an aesthetic benefit to it, to it being located there.
I want to make sure I was looking at the right house.
Yeah, I understand. And there's also, this is going right where an existing patio already exists, correct?
Right, yes, you can see that on the left side. The existing concrete paver patio is located in the back there.
Is the entrance door just from the outside, or is there one from?
I'm sorry?
Is the entrance door to the porch just from the outside, or is there one from the
Yes.
inside as well?
No inside entrance, just outside.
Outside, okay.
I just have a question. You said you got written approval from the other unit, A?
Yes.
Okay, 'cause it wasn't in our packet. That's why I'm
I
asking.
apologize. I thought it was submitted with the application, but if it wasn't, I apologize. I believe.
Okay, why I'm asking is, according to the survey, where you want to build this sunroom is common area. So that was my question is it going to, it's going to be for use for both units, and it's going to be deeded to go with both units?
I think the Blumenthals will allow the.
No,
other-
I'm not saying allow because it's common area, so I'm asking, is that going to be,
But condo documents can be agreed to by the property owners, and it'll be used however they agree with the condo documents amended accordingly.
okay. And so when you say the pavers are going to be replaced, is that the whole front or just in front of B?
That's a Pam question.
So where it is hatched on the P1 sheet, along the right side of just Unit B, that will be replaced.
Okay, so not in front of A?
No.
Okay. Now, I didn't see that the patio was ever approved to be built. You're putting on top of a patio. Did that ever get approval to be built?
That was
I think it
pre-existing.
existed when my
There
client
when we
bought the
bought it.
property. I have
it's
no
pre-existing.
knowledge of other approvals there.
Okay. So the patio was never approved?
I can't say whether or
can't
not
say-
the
oh,
patio was
okay.
ever approved.
How long have you lived there?
Since 2020, October 2020. And the patio was there when we moved in, the pavers were there when we moved in.
And you said there is approval from the,
Condo association?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other unit owner is here. I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but the other unit owner is here and will speak to it, and I can certainly submit the
right,
written
okay,
approval.
because there's no condo fees associated with this unit, or these, right? It's just,
No.
I don't know the answer to that. The Blumenthals are saying no, but I also don't know that it's particularly relevant to this board's decision.
This is, these two units, if it would be all right if I answer?
Sure, of course.
We, the owners, we all manage it together ourselves.
okay.
And we have a very good relationship, so we've discussed this, and quite honestly, there's the building. There are 4 buildings sort of lined up. It's 107, 109, 111, and 113. And most of us know each other, and certainly the neighbors in 107 A and B, our unit, which is 109 A and B, we all get together on holidays, we're all very friendly, and this is pretty much open to whomever wants to use it. We feel like we're a community.
All right, well, let me just try to close this part out. It's not, I don't know that it's a zoning consideration, but as a lawyer sitting here who litigates most of the time, I'm telling you, you've got to really get that clear in your condo docs, because it will rear its ugly head at the worst possible time when you go to sell it, and no one will know who can use this unit. So you need to work with your counsel to make that very clear. It's not a zoning issue, but it's a,
Understood. Thank
agree
you.
with that.
deal with someone like me.
The
Thank
condo
you.
documents will need to be amended to reflect this. The condo survey will have to be amended to reflect this, and there will be an indication about usage in the condo documents.
But you're
that'll be
representing
recorded.
the condo, other unit owner has consented to this, you're representing that.
I am, and I apologize if it wasn't submitted. I certainly have it in writing. I know that Sherry gave it to me. And like I said, they're here tonight, so you'll hear from them.
Now, this is going in front of one of the windows, is that correct?
Yes, so we have a double window on the corner there.
But there's no access from inside the house?
No.
Just outside?
That's correct.
Pam, you've reviewed Craig's review memo.
Yes.
And don't take exception to any of the comments in it, correct?
Not at all. Everything looks good.
Including the requirement that we submit a drainage calculations as a part of compliance plans, correct?
Yes, that's fine.
And we do also have Public Works as well as Shade Tree with no comments as a part of this application.
Okay, let's go ahead and have Craig's report.
Okay. So my latest review memorandum is dated December 31st, 2024. This is a project that's also located in the R2 Low Medium Density Residential District. This is an addition to a semi-detached dwelling, which is 2 units that are touching each other, have a common party wall. So there are 2 units on the site. That is not permitted in the R2 zoning district. R2 zoning district only permits single-family dwellings. Okay, so they've described exactly what the nature of the porch and the description of where that is, and I'm going to move into the completeness checklist review on page 2. They've requested waivers from items 2, 19, 23, 26, 27, and 33. I supported those waivers based on the nature of the application. I did ask for item number 28 to be provided as a condition of approval. The applicant has just agreed to that. And essentially, why I asked for that is because this area is in an area that is prevalent with stormwater issues, and this lot is over on lot coverage. So we asked them to mitigate that coverage. It's one of the potential negative aspects of this, and because they're doing that, I think they're satisfying that criteria by addressing the potential stormwater issue. Okay, with regards to the Bulkin area review on page 3 of 5, this is an existing undersized lot. The lot size requirement is 7,500 square feet, where 6,500 square feet exists. The lot width and lot frontage requirements are also not met. The existing lot is 50 foot wide, where 60 foot is the minimum requirement. And then finally, they are modifying the lot coverage. They're taking up pavers, they're proposing a roofed porch on the rear of the structure. The maximum permitted is 40%, existing is 46.1%, and they're mitigating that by providing pervious pavers and taking that 50% credit for pervious materials and mitigating that to 45.5%. So those are the variances that are required. The conditions of approval should be in my general review comments. Item on page 5, item number 1 is provide the required signature approval block on the plan should the board grant approval. Item number 2 is we ask the zoning table be updated to reflect the comments in the review memorandum. Item 3 is we would like to see and verify that there indeed pervious paving materials that are being provided, so those construction details must be provided on the plan so that the contractor will follow those and ensure that we're getting pervious material. 4, I talked about the grading and drainage plan, so that is that recommendation in that item, as well as item number 5, which details that they're required to comply with Chapter 525, the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements both during and after construction. Item number 6 is our standard condition that we evaluate the sidewalk after construction to make sure nothing is damaged. If there is, we will ask you to replace that to the satisfaction of the board engineer. Item number 7 is we tie the issuance of the certificate of occupancy to the acceptance of improvements, so we will inspect those improvements and verify you're complying with the board's approval. Number 8, you're required to comply with the requirements of the Shade Tree Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works Department. We did receive recommendations from Public Works Department dated 1/9/25. They recommended approval with no comments. Shade Tree Commission recommended approval dated 1/22/25, indicating that there are no trees involved. And the fire recommended approval dated 2/24/25 with no comments.
Craig, I have a question for you.
Sure, I'll pause.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were done or pause.
Yeah.
When you say that for review comments for the variance, that it's semi-detached dwellings are not permitted in the R2 area, when this was approved, was there any variances that were, anything that was carried along that we could not, that were restricted with this
I don't know
building?
when those were approved, but I'm sure it predates this zoning because there's a successive 4 units that are duplexes.
Okay. I didn't know if there's, like, you know how Village Green, they're not allowed to have pools or things like that. I didn't know if there was
There's
anything.
no restrictions on it. They're just they're in this R2 zone, and now they have to comply, and that's why they're here seeking a use variance for the expansion of a nonconforming.
Okay, so there's nothing that was put in place when they were approved?
Nothing that I'm
Okay.
aware of. We don't have a resolution of when they're approved. They may have just been by right and just built with
Okay.
no board approval. It
Okay.
might predate zoning. I'm not sure how long those units have been there.
I think 95.
Okay, but we don't know that, and absent of that, we're granting a use variance based on their application and
Yeah,
testimony.
it was just because you made that comment in the last one, that's why I was bringing it up.
Okay. Okay, they're required to comply with any and all other necessary state, county, and local approvals. This project is not located in a historic district, so they do not need HPC approval. They're required to comply with any and all applicable affordable housing requirements at the time of approval or issuance of permits. And finally, they're required to revise the plan subject to the board set conditions, and they're required to submit that requisite number of compliance plans to the board engineer for review and approval should the board grant approval. That was a summary of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And just be aware that this is a use variance, so they need 5 affirmative votes.
Okay. I'd like to open it up to the public within 200 feet. Welcome to come to the podium here and make sure that the microphone is on.
Yes.
Will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, please state your name, spell it if it's tricky, and give us your address, okay?
Good evening. My name is Joanne Hollenbach. It's JoanneHollenbach.
First name got me, actually.
I'm sorry.
How is that, Joanne?
I'm sorry?
Spell your first name again.
Joanne, all one word.
Got it. We make you famous and we put you in the resolution. So you want Hellenbach.
HO, it's okay, LL,
Oh, baby, it's an O. It's an O. Okay, got it.
HOLLENBACH. Okay.
Thank you.
Your address.
My address is 107B First Avenue in Cape May.
Say what you like.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to make a comment this evening. Also, thank you for the work that you do for our community and the service that you do for the city. I don't think people realize how difficult it is to make the decisions. It's hard sometimes to say no, but I'm here to hopefully ask you to say yes, in that I support the application that is before you. I am the neighbor. When I look out my front door, and our backyards share, I see or will see this structure that they are asking for. So I'm here simply to provide support and my confirmation for this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm going to amend what I said to the board, because honestly, I thought that Mrs. Hollenbach was from 109A. But I apologize. I will submit the signed approval from the condominium association. I apologize if it did not come over with our original resolution. It will be submitted as a condition of approval. We have it. It's in my office.
Is there anyone else within 200 feet that wishes to speak? Anyone beyond 200 feet? Closed to the public? Any final statements or?
No, we appreciate your time. What Mr. and Mrs. Blumenthal are trying to do is what we consider to be kind of a modest revision to make their property more usable and feasible for what they need at this point. We hope that the mitigating of lot coverage will be a benefit to the property as a whole, and will, offset some of our request. We appreciate your time.
I don't want to assume, but the 109A is the person.
Attached.
you need to send to. Okay, any other board talk? The motion I'd recommend being made, but how you vote is up to you, is a motion to grant the variances requested by the applicant, listed 1 through 4, on page 3, subject to conditions and waivers described by the board engineer on page 2, and the conditions outlined 1 through 12 on page 5, with additional conditions the applicant will submit at the consent of the owner of 109 First Avenue. This is a expansion of a non-conforming use, so the applicant needs 5 out of 7 votes in order to succeed. If you're going to vote no, please articulate your reasons carefully so I include them in the resolution.
I'm sorry, Rich, you said that it would include the approval of 107A, right?
That is condition 13.
Okay.
109.
I'm sorry.
107.
We heard from 107.
Yeah, that was mine.
107B, yeah.
I make the motion?
I'll second.
Ms. Sheehan motions, Mr. Venuto seconds. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You taking off?
Now, I guess.
Oh, right. Lucky.
Our next application is Tom Harrison, 1000 New York Avenue. We have 2 board members that need to recuse themselves.
Who would that?
Mr. Walsh and Mr. Ledwin will go into the audience.
I can say.
And if you want me to draw the lights down or anything, just let me know, you guys. It's up to you.
I know, I can see.
Okay, it's up to the board.
Madam Chair, you're the decider. You okay with the lights on?
I have a printed copy for everyone too. This is more for the audience.
Okay.
So I will hand this out in just Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Erica Lozama. I'm an attorney and partner at the law firm of Berry, Corrado & Grassi.
Green is go.
Green is go. Oh, there we go. All right, good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Erica Lozama Simonson. I'm an attorney and a partner at the law firm of Berry, Corrado & Grassi. I'm here today representing Pamela and Thomas Harrison. They are the homeowners of 1000 New York Avenue. Now, I do have a paper copy for everyone. I have pre-marked this already as H1.
Thank you.
The people in the audience, can you see the screen okay? All right.
I will stay standing for purposes, excuse me, I'm sorry, I need one. I just gave you my copy as well.
She needs one. Here you go.
Here you go.
Thank you.
I wanted to hand you the whole thing, right? So keep passing it down. Broke protocol.
All set, everyone has a copy? Okay, excellent. All right. We are here today because of a notice of violation the Harrisons received back in October of 2024. This violation states that the second floor of their garage is a living accommodation. For the benefit of the board and the audience, these are photographs of the second floor of the garage in question. Here, this photograph is taken with the back to the stairs. This is immediately to the left of that arch. If you see the corner right there, I have a pointer, to the left, that is the wall immediately to that side. And it's equally shifting to the other side. You can see that there's a wall, and that's where it's cut off. This photograph is as if my back was to this window, and that opening right there leads to the stairs going down to the first floor of the garage. That is the second floor of the garage. Key features I'd like to point out of this room, it's only 282 square feet. There is no water connection, no kitchen, no closets, no toilet, no shower, no sink. There is no outside shower hookup. There is no additional room off of this primary single room. This room, what you see is what we have. There is no other room branching off of this subject second floor. A little bit of history about this property. This property received an HPC Certificate of Appropriateness on February 22nd, 2021. There are no outstanding inspections or approvals. They have received fire, plumbing, elevator, have received all of these approvals. The only thing outstanding is this one violation regarding the second floor garage. Now, before we get into the main issue of this case, I do want to introduce the homeowners here as well as their contractor. And I'm sorry I'm standing behind you, Pam and Tom. But Pam, would you please introduce yourself to the board, just your full name? But before that, please, if the board could swear her in.
I'm going to swear everyone in. Our board engineer remains under oath. Each of you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Okay. Pam, I'm sorry I'm speaking behind you, but when did you purchase 1000 New York Avenue?
We purchased it in 2017, I believe.
Could you please describe to the board what your vision was for this property when you purchased it?
Well, we're not new to Cape May. We started vacationing here with our family in 1988. So, and then we fell in love with Cape May. We bought our first home here in 1992. So we've actually been coming to Cape May for about 37 years. We've owned our home here for 33 years. We raised, our children spent summers here every year. It's a very special place for our family. We have 3 children. We have 10 grandchildren who also enjoy Cape May. Our children bring their children here. And we love Cape May. We've often talked about how we would like the possibility of having our house in Cape May as our permanent residence in Cape May. We currently live in Armonk, New York. So when the opportunity became available to purchase 1000 New York Avenue, it was an opportunity for us to design a house that we could use as a full-time permanent residence, should we just decide to do that. Our house now is more of a summer cottage, not even a coat closet to store any winter clothing. So we designed the house with having a permanent residence in mind.
Perfect. Thank you, Pam. Tom, could you please explain what this home means to you? What the vision of the reconstruction of 1000 New York Avenue means to you?
Sure. Thank you very much. In addition to what Pam has said, when we bought our first property, it was my desire, my dream, that eventually at some point in time we could literally have the entire family here, which, as Pam said, is 3 children and 10 grandchildren at one time, so that we could enjoy the holidays, we can enjoy summers as much as they could get here. And so this property really was the answer to that dream for me. And with this property, we can have all 3 children and 10 grandchildren here. And as grandchildren are, they happen to be noisy from time to time. They happen to be running through the house. And that's sort of the beauty of what Cape May offers to us. It is a place to bring the family together as a unit in one place that we all love and that they grew up in the summertime.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom.
Sure, thank you.
Tom, so as you know, we're here today because of the issue regarding the second floor of the garage.
Yes.
Could you please explain to the board what was your vision for the second floor of the garage?
Sure, thank you. So it's always been my vision to have a place here in Cape May, because we have 3 children and 10 grandchildren, a place where I could call my own, a place where I could escape, do the writing that I do the thinking that I do. I am retired at this point in time. I've been appointed to a number of boards of companies and a nonprofit board. Most of those boards meet by Zoom, and so because of the nature of that, I need a quiet place in which to work. I certainly need a quiet place in which to write and to think, because I am a published author and I have one more book that I'm currently thinking about. And so a private place for me to escape so that I'm not negatively impacting the rhythm of the family that's going to be in the proper house, so that I'm not interfering with them and so they're not interfering with me, because it's really difficult to have a Zoom meeting or to think and write a book when there are 3, 5, 7, 10 grandchildren running around. So it's always been, again, my dream to have this, I'll call it a man cave for me to go to, so that I'm not interfering with the family and I'm not interfering with Pam and her moving through the house as well. That's been my dream since day one with this property.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Did you share this vision of yours of, I think you called it a man cave, with Ken Mann, your contractor, with your interior designer, with Joe Ross, your architect? Did you share this intention with them?
Well, the answer to that question is yes and no. Ken's known about it from day one. Our interior designer has known about it certainly since day one. We had that conversation. But I didn't have the conversation with the architect because we've actually never met the architect. Everything that we conveyed to our designer was conveyed to Mr. Ross, the architect. So indirectly, he knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't have that conversation directly with him.
Did you have any intention of creating a living accommodation above the second floor of your garage?
Absolutely not.
Ken, you were the contractor on this project, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did you first come to meet the Harrisons?
I've been a contractor, GC, for about 25 years, since about 2000. I've done probably somewhere between 40 to 50, what I would say called new homes or complete resto mods, where I would call this job a resto mod, where we take an older house and bring up all new wiring, plumbing, that type of stuff. I met the Harrisons, I believe, in 2005. I had done a project for the designer, Mrs. Boucher. I had done work on her house, and they were working with Sandy, and I think that's how we were introduced. That's on the house that they use as their residence right now, their original one, the summer cottage. And I redid that one in about 2005.
I think that's right.
About 2005.
Did the Harrisons ever ask you to create a living accommodation above that second floor garage?
No, no,
Did they ever consider or have the intention to do so?
no.
Did you construct the second floor with any kind of water hookup?
No.
Is there even an outdoor shower connected to this garage?
Nope.
Thank you. Pam, you have another property in the R2 district. That's 1005 New York Avenue, correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay. This home, when was it constructed?
I'm not sure what year it started, but the construction was finished in 2017.
Okay. When the construction was done in 2017, did zoning inspect, let me back up, let me strike that. Does this property have a detached garage with 2 floors?
Yes, it does.
Could you please describe the features of the second floor of the garage at 1005 New York Avenue?
Well, that,
I can ask it another way. Does it have water connection?
no,
Okay.
it has no water connection. Has
Any
no-
kitchen,
No,
closet, toilet, shower, sink, or outdoor shower?
no.
Okay. When construction was completed, did zoning come to your home and inspect the principal home and the second floor of that detached garage?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Were you cited for any violations of having a living accommodation above that garage?
No, none.
Were you issued a certificate of occupancy?
Yes,
Is this an accurate depiction of the second floor of 1005?
that is it, yes.
Okay. Is this, if I'm standing here, my wall is to the back where the stairs are, they're directly behind me.
Yes.
Is that the left wall?
I
or
can't tell if it's the left wall or the right. Yeah, that's the left.
It's the left wall.
Okay. That angle that you see on the far right, is that peak that's kind of the triangle? It's the edge of that triangle, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any room coming out of this one single room? In other words, is it just this one room, or are there other closets or additional rooms branching out of this main room?
It is just this main room with stairs leading up from the lower garage.
Do you happen to know what the height of the ceiling is on this room?
Those, in that particular one,
Yeah.
I would say it's probably somewhere between 7 and 8 feet, maybe, at the
Okay.
most.
Thank you.
It's got to be, the whole garage has to be below, I believe it's 18 feet. So it's, you have an 8-foot ceiling in the garage, 4 joists, it can't be much.
I'm 5 feet, and it was pretty, 5'3", and there was some distance. So,
It's higher than 1,000.
just to reiterate though, Pam, zoning came, inspected this, and gave it a stamp of approval. You got a CO.
Yes,
When was that?
2017.
Okay. This is just a reiteration of what we just covered.
I was there, I was actually there when the zoning person came.
Okay. What how was this space used back in 2017, or from that point until 2025? How has this space been used?
Well, this property is used by our family members, and they have small children. So sometimes the children play there as a playroom. You can see that there's toys there. There's also, from time to time, been various pieces of exercise equipment there that they've gone out there and they've used it to exercise. That's primarily the use.
You have never had anyone live in that second floor, correct?
No.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the board, what we're dealing with today is this zoning violation that was issued by zoning officer Bruce Britton on October 9th, 2024. There are two violations here on this letter. One is the one we're focused on today, that no detached garage may contain living accommodations. The second is the retaining wall. As soon as we received this violation, and we found that the retaining wall was within the right-of-way, the Harrisons immediately addressed this. It is now conforming and is no longer an outstanding violation. So as I stated, the only one we have left to deal with is that whether the detached garage contains a living accommodation. I took the liberty of also pasting down here living accommodations, and I'm sure you've seen this definition before. I will just read it into the record, though. Living accommodations are kitchens, bathing facilities, sleeping quarters, toilets, and toilet facilities, or any other improvements intended to support human habitation. As you've heard from the Harrisons, the 1000 New York Avenue detached garage is only 282 square feet. No water, no kitchen, no closets, no toilets, no break-off rooms, no sink, no outside shower. They have already had an identical setup at 1005, approved by zoning. However, I anticipate the board is going to bring up Mr. Ross's architectural plans and what he stated in his plans of not for occupancy. What this means now is the Harrisons are no longer able to use the space above the second floor of their garage that is not a living accommodation. What the architect did, and he could have done it in error, was prohibit and now limit the use of his own client's space on their property. I'd like to make clear that architectural plans do not bind the owners. The architect is not an attorney. He is not a judge. He's not a fact finder. He misinterpreted the zoning code because occupancy is not noted anywhere in the definition of living accommodations. He does not have the ability to limit a client's use in their own home, and it is directly in contrast to what his clients, the contractor, and the designer all knew were Mr. Harrison's wishes, and that was to be able to have a space to write on that second floor. At the end of the day, the zoning ordinance overrules an architect's interpretation.
Can I tell my personal opinion is that it's irrelevant what the architect really called it.
I'm sorry?
I don't see the relevance of what the architect necessarily called it.
It's not relevant, I agree.
I mean, if you called it a bathroom, it doesn't make it a bathroom.
Agreed, no, this,
The board's going to determine whether that is habitable space or not the architect. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I don't see the relevance. I mean, the board may feel differently, but the architect called it, could have called it anything. We have architects call things all the time storage, and we know it's a bedroom, so, you know, I don't know if that-
perfect. So then you go into my next point, Mr. King. So habitable, I believe you called it habitable space? Habitable area? I didn't catch the definition, but let me,
You're making your, I'll do my thing when I do my thing.
got it. All right, so let me go into that definition. Living accommodation is the term before the board. It is in the ordinance. It is in the definitions. We've already seen that right here. In living accommodations, at the very end, it says intended to support human habitation. Human habitation is not defined in the ordinance. So
I anticipate the board will try to find some kind of common word or common meaning, and that would lead to habitable area. Habitable area is not human habitation. It's not the same term, and it's not, human habitation is not defined, so there's a filler, an attempt to use habitable area. Habitable area then states an interior finished room enclosed by a floor, ceiling, and a permanent weather-resistant walls, which has a minimum floor-to-ceiling height of 6.5 feet, which is intended primarily for human occupancy. So, human occupancy has come into this picture through a 1, 2, 3, 4 degree of separations. We have gone from living accommodations to human habitation, which is not defined in the ordinance, to habitable area, to then human occupancy, which is also not defined in the ordinance. By going so far, 3 degrees of separation, we have removed ourselves from the original intent of that definition of living accommodations. We know occupancy was never contemplated under the original definition of living accommodations, which was amended in 2005, because we know of at least one property identical to this one at 105 that was approved. There are others that were approved, but unfortunately these folks could not be here today. They are not in the area. But we know that other second-floor garages have been approved. Human occupancy was never contemplated. Human occupancy does not mean you can live there. If the zoning board wants to take into consideration that something cannot be used because it's a human occupancy, there is a pathway to do that, and that is to amend the ordinance. If the board denies this appeal because they find this is a space for human occupancy, they have in fact circumvented an entire procedure where an amendment needs to be introduced, first reading, second reading, public comment. That was completely taken off the table. If human occupancy is supposed to be, or desired to be, under the definition of a living accommodation, there needs to be an ordinance that reads that for human habitation and human occupancy. I'd like to talk about the chilling effects that will take place if our appeal is denied today. I understand that Mr. King noted that I shouldn't be too concerned with human occupancy and that our architect cited that and highlighted, I'm not sure who highlighted it, but it was in the plans. I'd like to point out that a zoning decision is left to the zoning board. The zoning board cannot delegate any responsibility or statutory authority to an architect or another professional and say, here, your professional said it's not for human occupancy, we have to listen to them. No, it is up to the zoning board to make that decision. If the zoning board does not approve our appeal, in effect, it has now made every second floor garage in the R2 district not allowed without the introduction of an amendment to the ordinance. That is arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable on its face. There is a process to include the term human occupancy in the definitions of the zoning ordinance, and it's through an ordinance amendment. By denying this appeal, ladies and gentlemen, you are now stating, folks of the R2 district, you can't even step foot in your upstairs to read a book. You cannot step foot upstairs to play an instrument. You can't step foot upstairs to be on your phone to find some quiet time. You have created, I respectfully say this, non-conforming uses in the R2 district without a zoning amendment. This space has already been approved. 1005 has been approved. There are other places that have been approved. Unfortunately, like I said, the homeowners could not be here today. But to deny now this appeal would be arbitrary and inconsistent with the precedent made by the zoning board and by what has been done in the past. The chilling effect that will happen across the city of Cape May is severe. There is a method and there is a procedure in place to address human occupancy.
but that does not mean living accommodations. The impact to the Harrisons, as I've already stated, he cannot step foot up there for a moment of peace, for a moment to write his book that he's currently working on. He cannot play on his phone. He cannot play an instrument if he so desired. But the chilling effect that this would create is severe. There is only one question before the board, and it is not, is the second floor of the garage a living accommodation or suitable for human occupancy? That is not the question before the board. The question before the board is the second floor of the garage a living accommodation only? I respectfully ask that the board grant our appeal of the zoning officer's determination and direct the construction office to issue my client a final certificate of occupancy. Absent any other questions, that is the summation of my case. Thank you very much.
Counsel, I do have a question for you, if I could.
Please.
Excuse me, Rich, could you just bring that mic? Thank you.
Advantage of just having dealt with this a month ago, so I inadvertently know more about it than I did a month ago. Can we just go to the definition of living accommodations? It says kitchens, bathing facilities, sleeping quarters, toilets, and toilet facilities, or any other improvements intended to support human habitation. Okay? Aside from kitchens, bathrooms, and bedrooms, what else is in a house? So to me, this is saying kitchens, bedrooms, bathrooms, and any other room that would be in a house. That's a living accommodation. So what we can't have is people putting rooms in their garages. So I don't think we have to go anywhere other than that list to find the answer to this question. It's sleeping quarters. So the running water thing, that knocks out running water, because sleeping quarters don't have running water. So I think that the purpose of this is that you live in your house and you garage in your garage, okay? But you don't live in your house and live in your garage. And sure, you can stand in the cold in your garage and work on things like my dad does, and you can do all that. And you can store a bunch of stuff upstairs in your garage. You can do all that. But what you can't do is have rooms in your house and rooms in your garage, because Cape May is so dense and it's at such a premium that if we allow that, we will have bedrooms above every garage. It'll just be, put bedrooms up there, and now, because people go inside and go to the bathroom, and it's a $600 bedroom, a $600 a night bedroom above the garage. So I believe this definition is intended to capture the rooms and the type of rooms that are generally found in a house. And a children's playroom is one of those things that we can't list every kind of room. We can't say bathrooms, kitchens, bedrooms, living rooms, dens, writing rooms. So it's other living accommodations. And our zoning officer goes and he looks to other definitions about habitable space and all that. And he looks to, is there drywall? Can it be temperature controlled? Things like that that make it clear. Like, 'cause maybe there's something part way, but that's what's going on. And that's what this last resolution, although that was an outbuilding, so it had another layer of complication, because they don't just have that definition. They have another layer of definitions for an outbuilding. Because outbuildings are really supposed to be things you find on a farm. That's kind of the outbuilding concept. So I mean, it's not that your argument isn't good and persuasive. I just want you to respond to that concept.
I respectfully disagree that, I do, sorry.
No,
Let me just answer really quick, Ken, if you don't mind. I agree that all we have to look at is this definition. We don't need to look at human occupancy. We don't need even to go 2, 3, 4 degrees of separation going from living accommodation, human habitation, which is not even defined, habitable area, human occupancy. That is going so far beyond the original scope of this definition that it becomes arbitrary and capricious to go that far down and say, because you occupy that space, it's livable now.
It doesn't become arbitrary and capricious. It's more thorough. So you certainly can go look at the other definitions to help inform this one. But I think that the board has come to the conclusion, and we did it last 2 weeks ago. I think it was this board. It wasn't planning. It was this board, right? That we want people to live in their houses and garage in their garages and outbuilding in their outbuildings. And what we don't want people doing is moving their living accommodations into their garages. Now, the fact that maybe that had happened previously, I guess it happened for these folks. If we had permitted it, if we had denied it before, would you be arguing, well, you should deny it now? No, the fact that it may have been done wrong before, I can't speak to that. I don't know all the circumstances, and maybe it was done wrong. But right now, I think this board, and they'll decide, I'm not a decider, but I've just sat here with them for 3 hours the other night doing this exact similar issue, and I've got 3 pages of decision-making here, so I have some idea what's in their head, that I think that's what's going on. So when you look at that definition of living accommodation, if they didn't want people to have their rooms of their house out of their house, it's hard to phrase it differently than they did. I mean, that seems to be a pretty good catch-all, don't you think?
No, I don't.
What's the difference between this and a bedroom?
Go ahead.
I would-
You wanted to
Well,
answer.
let me ask you this. What's the difference between what's up there and a bedroom?
That's not for sleeping, what
How
we
do you
have
know
in
that?
this case,
If a bedroom
and
in
it's
your-
not a living accommodation.
If this gentleman, I'm sure he's very spry, okay? But if he's writing and he gets a little tired, he has a little couch next to his writing desk, he takes a little nap.
But there is no couch.
Well, how do we?
But let me stop there really quick, because
It's a room.
this gets very dangerous. There's a quote by a judge from 1600 that says, "A man's home is his castle." To take away a man's right to use the second floor to his pleasure, to even be on his phone for a moment of quiet, that infringes upon a person's very right to enjoy their home. That is a dangerous precedent to set. It's been approved in the past. And I hear you're saying, well, that was wrong. That's arbitrary. There was a zoning officer that already looked at this space and said, this is approved. That is not consistent
He's no longer
with what's
with us.
before the board.
He's no longer with.
That does.
Can I just speak real quick in reference to this?
Controlled? Is this temperature controlled, this second floor?
Well, the whole
Yes,
garage
it
is temperature controlled because you're going to have a restored car in there, and you have to have it. Okay, so I'm just kind of talking to, I've sat in front of this board on 30 First Avenue. I know it's not in the same zoning, but you did say all of Cape May is not supposed to have things with garages. And we had an approval in the zoning board to put an art studio acclimated above a historic garage, where we took the roof off the garage, and we went in front of HPC and the zoning board, and it passed.
Why'd you go before the zoning board?
What's that?
Why were you before the zoning?
They came in front of the zoning board, and they didn't require us to get a variance. All they required Mr. Milligan to do was basically sign a letter that he wasn't going to use it for occupancy, basically is what they told him.
What street is that on?
That's number 31st Avenue. There's one right to the right of it and one to the left of it. 3 garages in a row, all have areas above them. One's used as, I think, a playroom. One's used as an art studio. I'm not sure what the other one is. And the other one, the gentleman, I think, sat on the zoning board or one of the boards at one time. I've also done other projects, and this is what I would call a complete resto mod. And when you're going in front of HPC, they do not want attached garages. And the Harrisons try to keep this whole project within a realm of trying to keep it down to a certain size so it doesn't look like a monstrosity, so it looks like a period piece, and I think they did a fabulous job. And one of the things they don't want is attached garages. And then above attached garages, lots of times people have these low areas, and they might put their office, and they make you do separate garages, and they do these rooms above them. And we've been doing these things for years. It's not just them. I mean, everybody has them. And it's like an art studio, a playroom, some of it's storage. Some of them are finished, some of them aren't finished. But that's kind of what it is, because they don't allow that space on those restored houses to have those garages attached to the house. They want them separate. And that's kind of keep the period piece and so forth. So that's really how that all came about. Now listen, we've had inspections on all these other properties, and there's a lot of other contractors, the same thing. And I understand from the zoning, from Mr. Britton, who's the zoning officer, I understand that he's the new guy, he comes in, he's interpreting how it is, I understand. And I understand we had other inspections from other zoning officials. But I sat in front of this board on number 31st Avenue, and we got approval.
We said 31st Avenue?
Number 30, I just want 30.
30 on First Avenue, okay.
When was
Mr. Milligan, Joe Milligan, Joe and Lori Milligan.
When was that?
I believe it was 2012, maybe 2012.
I've been here 9 years, I don't
2012.
So you're saying if it was an attached garage?
No,
then
they
he
have a
would-
detached
No,
garage.
I'm just saying, you're saying if it was a detached garage, then he could have his space above it. But you have a house right now that you have a finished attic, a habitable attic, so he could have his man space up in his attic if he wanted to. There's
What-
enough rooms in the house that there's another place for him to have his man space, let alone in a
What
garage.
I'm saying is I redid that house. It was a non-conforming historic house. It was like a little cottage. I redid the cottage in 2005, I believe, the house. I built the house in 2005. It had an old square garage, very similar to one of the ones on Harrison's property, okay? It had that. It was a one-story garage. We came and got permission to put a second floor, and we had to keep it within the 18-foot high, to put as an art studio, because Mr. Milligan is an artist. He has stuff in town here all the time. So, I mean, and we came in front of the board for that.
Let me just, thank you, Ken. Let me just summarize this. If the board wants to prohibit human occupancy, it can do that through a proper procedure by amending the zoning ordinance. There is a procedure. There's a first reading, there's a second reading, there is public comment. By denying this appeal, you are telling people who have second floors for man caves, for art studios, for places to read, for places to write, to say you don't have that right to use that anymore, even though they already got a CO. That is arbitrary and capricious. That is going to be a blanket-wide impact across the R2 zone and across the city of Cape May. That is dangerous ground. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, but there are properties that have COs issued for them. They enjoyed the second floor of their garages, and now the zoning board is saying that's not allowed without an amendment in place. If the zoning board wants that to be, talk to the council about it. Have there be an amendment. There is a process for that, but that is not in place today.
I just disagree with you, that's all. I think what we have right now says that to a point. That says that you don't have another room outside of your house, like Mr. King was saying. That's how we interpret, or we have been interpreting our zoning rules.
Having another room outside is very different than having something with a living accommodation, respectfully.
But it's a bedroom. I mean, the bedroom's in the list.
But how's that any different than just the separate garage? Tell me that. How's that any different?
What do
You live out in the garage. I live in my garage probably a third of my life.
Yeah, I get, but that's sort of the point, is
So what makes,
still use the garage as a garage, you can still do workshop stuff in there, but once it starts getting finished and is heatable and is sealed and looks like a place where you would sleep, or it starts like a playroom or a living room, it's a living accommodation. It's not an evil thing. It's not prohibited. It just means that you might need a variance for it, or that it's got to be inside the main structure. And there may be good reasons to grant variances for that. People may come in, and it may be a really old historic structure and be very small, and there's a huge garage, and it's space for some reason, and maybe the board exercises its discretion to permit it. But as a matter of right, we're deciding whether the board's decision that they're making, because they didn't bring it to us as an interpretation necessarily, we're supposed to review whether the zoning official has committed an error. Did he make an error in determining that this space violates this ordinance?
let me,
That's the decision the board
Rich,
takes.
I hear the
You had-
HVAC. as
You
the-
had some pictures up, original pictures up, that
Sure.
had no carpet in them. Then the other pictures you show have carpet in them.
Okay. But that doesn't make something livable. You can't live in a place
That's the other
if
unit.
it's
That's the-
carpet or uncarpeted.
That's the one that was, that's.
What is this?
That's the one that was already approved.
That's at 10:05, that's already approved. That's already approved.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought
Yeah,
it was the
this
same
is already
house.
approved, and they have a CO, this has been allowed. And I'm hearing the list, I have something drafted by Construction and Zoning, non-habitable detached garages, which non-habitable, again, is not in the definition, no finished flooring, no HVAC, walls and ceilings must be bare stud joists, insulated, no sheetrock. Fine, but that should be through an amendment of the ordinance.
I'm sorry,
That is
what
not
did you just
clear.
read?
I believe it's through the Cape May City, Mr. Britton drafted this, but I'm also hearing, well, you have carpet, do you have HVAC, is it finished? Fine, But that is something that should be amended in the ordinance because it's already been approved. It's been approved here, and it's been approved in many other homes across the district. It's dangerous precedent to now go back and say, this is not approved without an amendment to the ordinance. That is not within the zoning board's purview. That is through the council, through an amendment, that which the zoning board then enforces.
You understand that when things are approved by the zoning official, unless someone appeals it, it doesn't come to us. So it's, whatever happened when they approved these things, those are things that were done by, I guess, if the testimony is true, and we have no real documents about this, I don't know that that was there when it was approved, there's testimony. We don't see the things that are approved by this zoning construction department. We only get appeals if they come here. So I have to tell you, I've been here for 9 years, and I haven't seen this board act contrary to what they're doing tonight. It may have happened, but I have not seen it in 9 years. So what goes on out there, we can't speak to it, only when it comes to us. So it's only meaningful to us if we have, in the past, read this differently, I guess that would be relevant, but the fact that it got passed for a CO at some house that we never even saw, it's just not that meaningful to everybody here. This group, as far as I recall, has always looked to the height of the ceiling, the finish of it, temperature control. They've done all these things because people try to trick us a lot as to what's storage and what's living space. So we've always been pretty consistent and careful about that.
There's no trick.
But if I came in front of the board,
We deal with it. We deal all the time. I did not mean to say they tricked us.
if
The
I,
architect may have.
if I came in front of the board and you guys approved a second floor garage on a historic structure,
I understand
The-
that.
but-
This is actually the appropriate board to approve that kind of thing.
And you-
Because you can't go pull a building permit for it, because it's not a permitted use without coming to this board.
and we came here and you approved it.
Well,
Because
Ken,
of the
let's, hang on, Ken.
specifics to that specific property and case. We're not blanketly saying, do these everywhere.
But we didn't have even a full variance on
We
that.
wouldn't have had to come here.
Ken,
Exactly.
We came as they asked us to come from the board, and we came. It was Harris Slack was the architect on that.
Who?
Harris Slack was the architect on that.
I'm not sure.
You can request, well, I mean, no one's ruled yet, okay? But I mean,
But
we have a
and-
Hold on,
four-page
Ken,
resolution.
hold
on.
that kind of
Hold on.
gives you some idea, but you can still apply for a variance, and it may or may not be granted. But I mean, even if you do lose tonight, I'm not saying you will, you may win. I mean, I'm not a voter, I know where we.
I understand, I just don't know what variance we would seek if it's not a living accommodation. I hear you saying, well, it's a
But
bedroom.
once we say it's a living accommodation, respectfully, once this board says it's a living accommodation, until the judge overrules it, that's what it is. So you
Understood.
can appeal that, or you can try to get a variance. So that's all I'm saying. I mean, you can disagree, and you have the absolute right to disagree.
Sure.
And, you know, sometimes I disagree with what the board does. I mean, I get it, like, we can't all agree.
I don't want to speak in circles. I think the board has heard our argument. I just want to remind the board, the decisions cannot be arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. Arbitrary would be if this is denied, it's already been approved. And I hear what you're saying, Mr. King, well, this doesn't come before us, but your zoning officer who goes out to enforce the zoning laws is approving them. If you deny this appeal, the definition of living accommodations has been construed to now mean human occupancy. Because a bedroom is, what I'm hearing is if you sleep there, because I sleep somewhere, it doesn't make it a sleeping quarters or a bedroom. It's just somewhere where you slept for a moment. But that doesn't make it a bedroom or a sleeping quarters. Capricious, because there is no amendment to the zoning ordinance allowing the board to do what it may do in terms of denying this appeal. There is no amendment to that ordinance. The right avenue to do that, to get clarity, because this is not the 4 degree of separations from living accommodation, human habitation, habitable area, human occupancy, which I've seen in the resolution, is so far from the original definition of living accommodation. I saw the resolution, Mr. King, that you mentioned, and there was a roadmap to get to where we got to human occupancy.
Respectfully, that was an outbuilding. And an outbuilding uses different language than merely the living accommodation. This is a garage, so it's.
Understood. Just the living accommodation analysis appeared to me to be the same. So I asked the board to rule on what's before it now, and if there's any changes that need to be made, to be clarified, to include no HVAC, no insulation, no sheetrock, no finished flooring, which is not clear from the living accommodations definition, that should be through an amendment. That should be a conversation had with the zoning board and council. That is the correct avenue. So, absent any other questions, that is our case. Thank you very much.
We'd like to have the zoning officer, Bruce Britton, come up and speak, please.
Hello.
Hello.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward, I think. I do believe the pictures you showed of the area aren't accurate, though. They might have been taken while it was being done, but that's not what I saw. The top of the steps is a finished mahogany door. The floor is a finished floor. Everything's finished. It wasn't half done like you showed in the pictures. So it's basically the same, it's everything else. And in my opinion, it's living accommodations. The fact that you're going to use it as an office or whatever you're using it for, that's living accommodations. That's not storage. That's pretty much it from me. Any questions?
Yes, I do. Mr. Britton.
Yep.
Mike.
Mr. Britton.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just Erica, grab a microphone for you.
Okay. Mr. Britton, just to confirm, is there a water connection at this property?
Is there what?
A water connection on the second floor?
No,
Not
not that I saw.
Okay. Was there a kitchen?
Nope.
Did you see a stove?
No.
Sink?
No.
Closets or breakout rooms?
No.
Any shower?
Nope.
Any sink? Any
It's all
attached-
central
a
vac?
sink? A sink. A sink. Did you see a sink?
No sink.
Okay. In the definition of living accommodations, does it say you can't have HVAC?
I don't know the exact wording of that last sentence, but any other elements that contribute to human habitation, that's HVAC.
You can live somewhere if you don't have HVAC, correct?
Sure you can.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily
You
need to
can
have
also bring in
HVAC.
a window air conditioner. You could also bring in a plug-in electric fireplace. I mean, there's lots of things you could do.
Thank you, Mr. Britton,
Sure.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to have report.
Okay, I'll summarize my December 30th, 2024 review memorandum for this application. This is a project located in the R2 Low Medium Density Residential District. This is an appeal from the decision of the zoning officer. The first part is my completeness review, and that's just a section that requires what has to be submitted, and I did believe that this is a complete application. On page 2 of my report, I pull the section out of our code that deals with the appeals procedure. Sections A and B are typically how the applications are submitted. C, I think, is the appropriate part just for you to focus on, is the Zoning Board of Adjustment may reverse or affirm wholly or in part, or may modify the action, order, requirement, the decision, interpretation, or determination appealed from, and to that end have all the powers of the administrative officer from whom the appeal is taken. Okay? The following section just details what the zoning official cited, and they've already posted that up on the screen. There were 2 violations. They've essentially said that they will address the retaining wall issue. What they're really appealing is section 525-55A3I, which says no detached garages may contain living accommodations. So right after that, I pull the definition out of our code for living accommodations. Kitchens, bathing facilities, sleeping quarters, toilets, and toilet facilities, or any other improvements intended to support human habitation. Now, I'll give you my opinion on this. I agree with our solicitor. That is not meant to capture all of the names of rooms that could be in a house or, that support habitation. Dens, offices, playrooms, things that they mentioned that are part of this are all part of that. And that last part of that, or any other improvements intended to support human habitation, is the catch-all, like what you interpret as being living accommodations. So that's for the board to decide, but I believe that a playroom or a place to work and write or a man cave could fall in under that category. But that's the board's decision. I also pull out, and we've just done this a couple of times, I pull out the definition of habitable area. Our ordinance is quite clear that we have controls on habitable areas on whether it's in a garage, and I'll go into that in a second, but our floor area ratio is very important to the city as a determination of the massing and the use of a specific lot and how it's controlled by that definition. So that definition is an interior finished room enclosed by a floor, ceiling, and permanent weather-resistant walls, which has a minimum floor-to-ceiling height of 6.5 feet, which is intended primarily for human occupancy. So that has been a very determining factor, a very important factor. This board considers it all the time when we deal with these floor area ratio variances in dealing with this. Now, back to the garage issue. One thing I didn't indicate in this because I didn't know where this discussion was going, but I think it's pertinent. Our definition of garage, private. I'm going to read that into the record. A building or part thereof accessory to a main building and capable of storing at least one, but not more than 4 or less automobiles, incidental to the principal use of the property, with no provision for repairing or servicing such vehicles for profit, and which it's not intended, designed, or used for human habitation and does not contain living accommodations. So that was not brought up, but that's our definition of private garage. Now, section 525-55A3I says no detached garage may contain living accommodations. The following section is our section that controls other outbuildings. So typically, the two accessory type of structures that are permitted accessory to detached dwellings or duplexes have provisions that no detached garage may contain living accommodations, and then it says no outbuilding may be used for human habitation and can't contain living accommodations. That's paraphrasing because I didn't pull it up, but that's what the other outbuildings has another clause in it that brings another definition into play. But I believe, it's my opinion, that the code is quite clear that these accessory structures are not intended to have these habitable areas in them. All right, so I'll continue on with my review. I think the last part of this is just section 5917A. Your power is to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged by the appellant that there is an error in any order, requirement, decision, or refusal made by the building inspector or any other administrative official or agency based on or made in the enforcement of Chapter 525, zoning. So that's a summary of my report and the applicable sections of the code I believe that you're making your decision under, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has. Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to open it up to the public. Anyone within 200 feet that wishes to speak? Anyone beyond 200 feet that wishes to speak? Okay, it's closed to the public.
Is there, there's no.
Do I do a closing, or,
Oh, you can do whatever you'd like,
okay,
right? You can do a closing, right?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
okay, all right. I hear the engineer, I hear the comments of the board members. I ask that the board look at precedent. Look at what's been done in the past. Your zoning officer, I understand he's no longer with us, has made determination and has approved spaces such as this on many occasions. To say, well, he was wrong, that's not enough to just now suddenly change the way a zoning board decides. If there's something that the board has disagreed with that the last zoning officer did, that should be clarified through an amendment to the ordinance. Otherwise, going from precedent is arbitrary and capricious. It's arbitrary, certainly, because it's random. They've now, sua sponte, decided to go a different direction, interpret it a different way, and now takes away the right for many, dozens of your constituents, right to use the second floor of their garages. The pushback is going to be severe. I ask that the board continue with precedent. If it needs to amend the ordinance to include the no HVAC, no finishing, it can do so through an amendment with council. But again, I ask that it follow what it's been doing, follow what its last zoning officer has approved, because deviating from precedent and what's been approved, taking away second floor garages from R2 citizens is arbitrary and capricious and unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Just so the board, just to clarify for the board, this is an appeal from a decision by a zoning officer. You're to determine whether or not he made an error in his determination. Although this isn't a interpretation as that is classically discussed in the MLUL, obviously you are going to interpret your ordinance in a way to determine whether your zoning officer made an error. He is the zoning officer, so he deserves some respect. But ultimately, I believe you are the board that is charged with determining what the ordinance means and whether your zoning officer did it correctly or not. So I like you to have an open mind and a clear mind. Consider the good arguments by counsel, who's done a very nice job, and decide whether or not you think it was error to decide that this improvement above the garage is not permitted because it is a living accommodation as you understand the ordinance in total. So the motion I'd recommend being made, because everybody's looking at me, is what we will say, this is always a little confusing, but the motion I'd recommend being made is to you're either going to say affirm or reverse. You say affirm, it means you agree with the zoning officer. If you say reverse, it means you're reversing him and approving it, okay? So affirm or reverse. Let me try that this time, right? So the motion is, so there's a motion, someone make a motion.
I make a
to vote
motion.
On the zoning officer's determination.
Make a motion to vote on the zoning officer's recommendation.
I second.
Okay, Ms. Sheehan motions, Mr. Venuto seconds. Mrs. Notch.
Affirm.
Ms. Sheehan?
I affirm because I feel that the structure is designed, constructed, and intended as habitable space. It is temperature controlled. The floors are finished. definition of a garage is not containing any living accommodations. I feel it's a living accommodation. I feel that it is not an apartment because there is no bathroom, but it doesn't mean it's not habitable. Again, it's temperature controlled, it's comfortable for human, and would be habitable area under the code.
Mr. Yeager?
I'm going to unfortunately affirm. I do want to say that if I were back on the planning board again, or if I were back on the city council again, I would probably vote in favor of getting you a variance. Because I'm not sure, but I can tell you what I'm listening to is we have a board engineer, we have a board solicitor who clearly feels that the interpretation is correct. I can see walking into a completely finished attic above a garage, you would conclude that it's a living accommodation. I get all that, but in another board or in another council, I might go another way. But in this case, I have to affirm.
But I'm sure if there is an application for a variance, you will approach it with an open mind either way, correct?
Either way, yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Affirm. I agree with everyone's statements they made tonight. When it comes to our last meeting, we spoke at length about what habitable space means, and I agree with our conclusion on that.
Mr. Venuto?
Affirm. I think this appeal is fresh in our mind from last month, and I don't want to appear arbitrary or capricious, so I want to vote the same way I did last month.
Mrs. Werner?
I'm voting to affirm our zoning officer's opinion. I do think that there's room to look at this in the future. But we're affirming his decision because he's following what our code says right now.
That's it? Okay.
Council, thank you, good job. Good luck in future application.
If everyone wants to look at the bills, we need to
if you
discuss that.
Yeah.
it'd be okay.
No, well, the thing is.
Okay.
it becomes
Do we have a motion
Temperature control.
I'll make the motion.
to approve?
Bills.
Venuto?
I'll make the motion to approve the payments.
Thank you. Mr. Venuto motions. Mr. Lewin seconds. Mr. Lewin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
if everyone feels that they have a few minutes of time, Tim is our liaison with the Land Use and Development Work Group for the zoning board, and he attended the first meeting, and he just wanted to speak briefly.
I'll be real brief. The first meeting was February 25th. From what we deemed, the idea of the board is basically to make sure that everybody's on the same page as much as we can be, the different boards. But also, one of the things they did bring up that I thought was important is that we should all, I think, have a copy of the master plan, and maybe in decisions like this, to really review the master plan and see if that can be of some kind of guidance to us. I don't know what the master plan would say about this specifically, but this is twice now we've run into this, and I think we're going to see a lot of this. The interesting thing that they brought up at the very end is that Paul asked everybody's idea and wants to start a conversation on what we want to see happen to Cape May if there's a disaster. Hawaii lost that whole town, Lahaina burned to the ground. California's had these terrible disasters. Cape May had a disaster, burned half the town down back in the, what was it, 1890s or whatever it was. We're sort of, I'm just saying this myself, we're sort of living on borrowed time here. It's just a matter of time for we get whacked with a hurricane, we get whacked with fire. What do we want to see happen in case something like that happens? We get a fire and it burns from here to Congress Hall. Do we want to rebuild all these houses? Can we rebuild all these houses? Nothing here is to code, nothing is here to, anything that can be built, you know, just to, they use it as an example, the railroad houses on Stockton there, you know. How did they get rebuilt? Could they ever be rebuilt? What would happen to Cape May if we lost all this? You know, we couldn't put these houses 2 feet apart anymore. And Paul just wants a conversation to start. Everybody start talking about it, thinking about it, and come back. This board's going to meet 4 times a year. And, you know, there's just sitting there for a few minutes, there's like a lot in my mind. Like, yeah, just there's nothing to code. This building probably isn't even to code the way it's supposed to be. You know, stairs with no railings and, you know, little things like that. You couldn't build this stuff like this. And I think that was pretty much it. Oh, and I'm also going to send everybody an email. The new HBC chair is very concerned about the water survey that went out. I think we all got in the mail. And I don't know why he was on it, but he's very concerned about this, and he would like everybody to really take it to heart. And he sent me an email, and I'll just send that out to you, a copy of the survey and instructions about it and how he thinks it's important.
Is that okay with everyone? Because they asked me to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes. Do you want me to do it, Tim, or do you want?
That'd be great, yeah.
I'll do it. I'll
Thank you.
send it out tomorrow.
Okay.
The master plan is on the website, or used to be. I think it's still there, right? Still there? Okay, I haven't, but I can, if anyone wants a digital copy, I can always email them to.
You know, this tonight, I thought it'd be great if you were like really familiar with it, if you could.
I typically will pull excerpts out of the master plan, especially when we do consistency reviews and stuff like that with ordinance before the planning board, and bring excerpts into my review memos. I don't believe the ordinance deals with this. This is becoming a recurrent theme that we're seeing all the time, so we're going to have to address this at some point with clarity in the ordinance or changing of the ordinance.
I feel like the applicants are sort of trying to play fast and loose with the difference between habitable space and occupant.
Can we not do this? I'd rather not revisit this issue.
Right. Oh, okay,
Right
okay,
after
okay.
we made a decision, so let's,
And that's it. We're going to meet 4 times a year, and like I said, he wants to get everybody's idea of really thinking. That, I think, was the gist of this whole committee, is to get people to think what's going to happen in case, not to say when something, but in case something does happen. If we had a major fire again, what would become of the city? And what is people's idea of what they want the city to become in case it happens? So we're all not sitting here with our heads stuck in the sand and
Isn't there a provision?
yeah.
Isn't there a provision in the ordinance that allows you to rebuild what you had if it's demolished in?
I don't know, you know.
No, partial? Partial. Okay, so if it's totally demolished, then, okay, gotcha. I remember something like that.
I cover everything, you were there. That's all I got.
Thanks.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Yay.
Thank you, everyone.
and I haven't figured out anything.